Hi there, and welcome on the journey to transform culture. I'm Steve, and I'll be your guide. Hope everyone's having a fantastic day and an even better week. Folks, let's dive in. Today's topic is essentially few of them rolled up into one. It's truth, honor, and justice. I know, right? That's a sandwich right there. Truth, honor, and justice. Would you like some tomato on that? Yes, let's talk a little bit about truth, honor, and justice. Why are we talking about truth, honor, and justice? Well, in a very simplified way, I guess you could say, somewhat simplified. I don't know how simplified it'll be, but in a simpler way, I'm going to try to refine this down because in our organizations, in our culture at large, in our lives, truth, honor, and justice matter. They're important to our lives. They're important for us to have thriving lives. They're important for others to have thriving lives. And it creates a bond, an understanding, a common purpose, right? I should say a mode, an operating mode, right? That allows us to operate kind of with common purpose, even though our individual purposes may be different and organizational purposes are a little different, right? So let's talk a little bit about it. And one of the aspects about truth, honor, and justice is sometimes we get our truth, honor, and justice, and not that it's absolutely in a particular order, but a lot of times we want justice and we don't necessarily have an expectation of truth or a clear truth or to understand what the truth is, right? We want justice for something that we quickly believe is a truth. But in all reality, and you hear this often, my truth, your truth, I don't, look, truth is truth, okay? All we as individuals have, even small groups and so forth, are perspectives. The more perspectives you have around a thing, the more accurate the truth that you will have about a particular thing, right? So if we're in an intersection and God forbid a traffic accident happens, we'll just call it a fender bender to keep it a little easier on our heart today. But and there's a bit of a fender bender, but you have people at different, they were in different locations around that accident, right? Different corners, different parts of the street. One was up the block, one was two floors up in a building at their desk, and an accident happens. Everybody who saw this accident now has a perspective, and they believe that their perspective was truth. Okay? But the reality is, and you see this nowadays in like sports, right? I'm a big basketball guy, so basketball now has reviews toward the end of the game, and other times controversial, calls or situations where they have to make a call. And with our cameras and everything these days, we can redo a review, right? But we don't always have a luxury of a review in our lives. And back to the perspectives, everybody has a different perspective on what the truth is or was in a situation. And it is only after going through and assessing what occurred do we actually arrive at truly a truth, right? Everything else is us doing our best. And we're human beings, we're going to make mistakes. But it's important that we have truth. Why is that? Because the whole concept of truth is that it illuminates reality. Okay? So it is true that how I feel about a thing, yes, there's a truth to how I feel. I'm telling you truly, this is how I feel. I'm being genuine and being honest, right? That's true. And that's a truth. From that perspective, yes, your truth is simply your truth about you. That's all it's about. It can never be about somebody else because you can't know the depths of a human being. Unless it's something that we say or do, then obviously that's for public record, right? So there's that. But within us is one thing. But when we're organizing and we're trying to work together, live together, in organizations and the culture at large, it's important that we understand, hey, what is the truth? The truth is that the law says don't jaywalk, right? So when you get a ticket, it isn't that, well, I don't believe that jaywalking should be a crime or should be ticketable, we'll say, not necessarily a crime, but an offense, right? But that doesn't matter. That's just my opinion. That isn't my truth, right? Truth is, it has to be something that can be vetted through multiple perspectives. Okay, but it's important that we have truth and that we're truthful, right? So this goes into a different part of this. If the people who witnessed the activity of the accident now are not truthful with their perspective, well, then that skews reality or our perception of reality. And how many times has that happened throughout all of history where somebody has lied to the culture at large to what? Get them to believe a particular thing, get them all excited, amped up, and mad and angry and the whole thing. And next thing you know, people are doing all kinds of silly things in culture and hurting other people and so forth. And why is that? Their reality was affected by a mistruth, right? Or a lie, right? So there's that, the contrary, the opposite aspect of a truth. Okay, let's move on. Honor. Well, honor really defines character. And we could do a whole segment on character. But essentially, is a person trying, let's just break it down to its simplest virtue. Are you trying to do good for yourself and by and for others? Is what you say and what you do, is that, for the greater good? Is it for everyone's, best, right? And does your character live up to, you hear me talk about this. You've heard me if you've listened to any of the other videos. When I wrote the book, one of the things in there that I put was, we are here to protect love. And for me, that was rolling a lot of this into one kind of statement is because if there's something you love and care about, then, and I respect that you love and care about a thing, then I'm going to honor that, right? There's going to be honor. I'm not going to dishonor the love you have for your family, your friends, or for your coworkers, or for your life, or for your sports team. Although we might mess with each other, but I'm not going to dishonor that, right? I'm not going to bring dishonor to it. I'm going to honor that because I'm going to respect that. Okay. Character definitely there has to be an element of respect for others within our character. And that obviously puts us in a state of living honorably, right? And then, of course, justice. Justice is there to ensure fairness, right? So the justice comes when we establish who hit who in the traffic accident, and we now need to ticket the right people and so forth and so on, right? And we need to make sure we're following the rules and laws that we all agreed to. That's justness, right? Justice, justness, act of being just. So, and all of these things work together to encapsulate what it means to have integrity and to ensure that culture operates more harmoniously, right? This is another reason why I said you're here to protect love. Because if you're doing those things, if you're protecting love, right? If you're having the integrity to do the right thing, irrespective of who's looking, listening, and so forth, then that is going to lead to harmony in your own life and the lives of others. And when we're talking about working and living in the common spaces, right, in our culture, we're all here. We have to share the air and share the resources and so on and so forth. Well, we have to cooperate too to achieve goals that we have for each other. And some of those goals are what? To ensure that we have, that we are living in reality, that there is truth to the reality that we're living, that we are exuding character and we're living honorably, right? And that we are abiding by justice. Now, some folks can slip into the camp of, and we could do a whole video on this too, but systems. If you think about systems, you go back to the movie The Matrix and all of the Matrix movies, and essentially it's an artificial world, right? It's an artificial world and it's controlled. So think of our world now. A person can put themselves in the mindset of thinking, oh my gosh, somebody's controlling my world and controlling my life and so on and so forth. Well, on the dark end of this, yes, that would be the worst case scenario. But in a world or countries or aspects of the world, because not every country is free or democratic in their, in their approach to governance, but where there is that, uh, and then there is more freedom, and your voice does count, and your vote counts, then you are able to form and shape not only the laws but also those who lead um, the system that you've agreed to live under, that provide you all the life in America, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, right? Although we know it's tricky, and we know that people spend way too much time gumming up the system, right? So gumming up the system with too many rules and laws to the extent that it becomes a bureaucratic nightmare is just terrible. Okay, simplify it, right? We want to simplify, but ultimately, people get scared because they think, well, within a system, yeah, we you want us to be live under truth and have honor and we're for justice just to prop up a system. Well, there has to be order. There has to be a certain level of order. Otherwise, there's chaos. So if you are taking yourself or your family to the hospital, there is an order in which they are going to handle you through that process. And you can love it or you can hate it, but the fact of the matter is there is a process. And why is that? Because then it could serve the greatest amount as effectively as possible, hopefully, right? And tend to people's wounds and so forth and so on, right? And their sicknesses and illnesses and everything else. So you go to a hospital, you are in a system. Like it or not, you are in a system. But that system also is there to what? Help to be fair, right? Because we want fairness. That's part of that justice, right? We want a fair process. Now, does this mean that our systems can't be improved? Absolutely not. Our systems can be improved. Our systems are not efficient or effective. And this is why truth, honor, and justice are so important. Because if we can come to some truths, right, that it matters that we protect the love in each other's lives, if we can understand that as a truth, then there's going to be more harmony in our life. There just is. And then we're honoring that, right? As I said before, protecting love in your own life, it means also protecting love for other people's lives as well. And sometimes it's just allowing them to live their life, right? Just letting them live the life they want to, right? And not get so entrenched in trying to control other people, um, because everyone learns all lessons on the road and the path of their own life that they chose. So systems can be improved. It does greatly improve our ability to collaborate and to cooperate together in organizations and in the culture at large. If we understand that we need to be truthful, we need to understand some essential truths that we essentially are here to protect love, like it or not. It's just what it is, and it's how we will thrive and how organizations and our broader culture will thrive and be able to handle the changes and the shifts in the transformation that happens within culture. And then, of course, honor and justice, as we said before. But you want to have this because it actually does create an integrity within the system, right? The systems that we live under that we've all agreed to. It gives integrity to the system when we do this and when we conduct ourselves in these positive ways. And that we can thrive and we can, synergy, as we talked about in the last video, it allows us to synergize and we can actually find ourselves being more productive and people can elevate in their careers more quickly, they can grow, they can expand, they can so many great and wonderful things can happen, but there is a level of cooperation that comes from truth, honor, and justice. And embed that in your heart in your effort to protect love, right, throughout all culture, and everybody wins. So today, folks, truth, honor, and justice. How do you, when you're thinking, when you're speaking, when you're doing things and taking action out there? Are you being truthful? Are we respecting the truth that we need to protect everybody, protect love in everyone's lives because we want our love protected as well? Are we being honorable, right? Are we are the highest elements of our character coming through in our effort to honor that truth, right? And then of course, do we are we being fair? Is there justice in our lives? If we ask ourselves these questions as we go along, I don't think there'll be any question that you are doing and acting and reacting in ways that are protecting love in your own life and that of your family and then your community, organizations, and the culture at large. All right, folks. Remember, hit the good domino, the good green domino, 3 to 5 times a day to uplift, motivate, inspire, and just encourage folks. And when you do this, not only are we helping culture to transform in positive ways, but we're helping our own lives in the process. And that is an amazing thing. Okay, hit like, share, and subscribe. And until next time, we'll talk to you later.